Tiravanachari Jaya Rata Matava Kunjabiyari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabiyari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabiyari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome to the weekly or evening Bhagavad Gita class. Every evening at 6 o'clock we have a class on the Bhagavad Gita. Today we're reading from chapter 8, verse 3. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Oh, Jai, it's on the screen. Okay, so please chant responsibly. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Aksharam Brahma Paramam Sabhavo Jatma Muchyate Bhuta Bhavod Bhavakaro Visharga Karma Sangita. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Aksharam Brahma Paramam Sabhavo Jatma Muchyate Bhutta Bhavod Bhavokaro Visarga Karma Sangita. Jai. Please chant. Aksharam Brahma Bhavanam Bhavo Jatma Muchyate Buddha Bhavod Bhavakaro Visarga Karma Sangita. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Aksharam Brahma Paramam Sabhavat Jatma Muchyate Bhuta Bhavad Bhavakaro Visarga Karma Sangita. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Aksharam Brahma Paramam Bhavam Brahma Muchyate Bhuta Bhavod Bhavakaro Visarga Karma Sangita. Sri Bhagavan Vacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Aksharam, indestructible, Brahma, Brahman, Paramam, transcendental, Swabhavaha, eternal nature, Adhyatmam, the self, Uchyate, is called, Bhuta Bhava Udbhavakara, producing the material bodies of the living entities. Visargaha, creation, karma, fruit of actions, activities. Sangita is called. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the indestructible, transcendental living entity is called Brahman, and his eternal nature is called Adhyatma, the self. Action pertaining to the development of the material bodies of the living entities is called karma, or fruitive activities. Purport. By His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Brahman is indestructible and eternally existing, and its constitution is not changed at any time. But beyond Brahman there is Parabrahman. Brahman refers to the living entity, and Parabrahman refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The constitutional position of the living entity is different from the position he takes in the material world. In material consciousness, his nature is to try to be the Lord of matter, but in spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness, his position is to serve the Supreme. When the living entity is in material consciousness, he has to take on various bodies in the material world. That is called karma, or varied creation by the force of material consciousness. In Vedic literature, the living entity is called Jivatma and Brahman, but he is never called Parabrahman. The living entity, Jivatma, takes different positions. Sometimes he merges into the dark material nature and identifies himself with matter, and sometimes he identifies himself with the superior spiritual nature. Therefore, he is called the Supreme Lord's marginal energy. According to his identification with material or spiritual nature, he receives a material or spiritual body. In material nature, he may take a body from any of the 8,400,000 species of life. But in spiritual nature, he has only one body. In material nature, he is manifested sometimes as a man, demigod, animal, beast, bird, etc., according to his karma. To attain material heavenly planets and enjoy their facilities, he sometimes performs sacrifices, yagya, but when his merit is exhausted, he returns to earth again in the form of a man. This process is called karma. The Chandogya Upanishad describes the Vedic sacrificial process. On the sacrificial altar, 5 kinds of offerings are made into 5 kinds of fire. The 5 kinds of fire are conceived of as the heavenly planets, clouds, the earth, man and woman. And the 5 kinds of sacrificial offerings are faith, the enjoyer on the moon, rain, grains and semen. In the process of sacrifice, the living entity may make specific sacrifices to attain specific heavenly planets, and consequently reaches them. When the merit of sacrifice is exhausted, the living entity descends to earth in the form of rain, then takes on the form of grains, and the grains are eaten by man and transformed into semen, which impregnates a woman, and thus the living entity once again attains a human form to perform sacrifice, and so repeat the same cycle. In this way, the living entity perpetually comes and goes on the material path. The Krishna-conscious person, however, avoids such sacrifices. He takes directly to Krishna consciousness and thereby prepares himself to return to Godhead. Impersonalist commentators on the Bhagavad Gita unreasonably assume that Brahman takes the form of Jiva in the material world, and to substantiate this they refer to chapter 15, verse 7 of the Gita. But in this verse, the Lord also speaks of the living entity as an eternal fragment of myself. The fragment of God, the living entity, may fall down into the material world, but the Supreme Lord, Achyuta, never falls down. Therefore, this assumption that the Supreme Brahman assumes the form of Jiva is not acceptable. It is important to remember that in Vedic literature, Brahman, the living entity, is distinguished from Parabrahman, the Supreme Lord. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki. Om Jnanatimrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shritaitanna Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Garamayam Dadanti Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dino Bandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Binevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura. Everybody, Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai, Hare Krishna, dear devotees. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be able to give class on the Bhagavad Gita today. Prabhupada said, I only know there's one book, and because I know there's one book perfectly, I can defeat all other arguments. So everything we need is in Bhagavad Gita. And ultimately, Bhagavad Gita is it's described. The Gita is like a cow, and Arjuna is the calf. And the calf is encouraging the milk to flow from the cow, and Krishna is milking the cow. And then the great sages and the saints, they drink this milk in the form of Bhagavad Gita. It's a very, very nice analogy. And it ultimately all stems from Arjuna's questions. See, Arjuna, when one actually wants to when one gets to the point in their spiritual life where they want to make real advancement, then questions come. You see, many times you give books to people and they say, "Oh yeah, I've read the book." And I say, "Well, do you have any questions?" No, all made sense. When I first read Bhagavad Gita, devotees were asking me, "So, any questions?" Like, no, it all made sense. What does that mean? It means I understood nothing. I was giving one class on Zoom yesterday, and they scheduled it, you speak to this time, and then at a certain point you stop for questions. I stopped for questions, and there was no questions on it. And one person said, "Oh, it's because you give a nice class. It made so much sense. I got no questions." Really, because I think I was just waffling on. It wasn't making much sense. So naturally, because the way we function in the world is we create a certain paradigm. A paradigm means a certain way that we think things operate. So for instance, you take the paradigm of, you go throughout school, they tell you that, complex life forms, human beings, etc., have arisen, they've evolved from dull matter, which is somehow conglomerated and come together and evolved and become more and more complex. So that's a particular paradigm. And so naturally, when you take to spiritual life, you have what's called a paradigm shift. Your paradigm changes, and you get new information, and that information cannot be fitted into the already pre-existing way which you've ordered the thoughts in your head. And so, naturally, there's a paradigm shift. There's a certain amount of information you can add and keep your original ideas, but when there's a certain overload of information, when you receive more and more, in this instance, spiritual knowledge, then you actually have to make an entire shift. So like this, we see the scientists. We're not here to talk about Vedic astrology. I'm not so expert on this, but previously, scientists had an understanding of what's called the Earth is at the center, geocentricity. And then when they're measuring different planets, etc., over a certain time, they could no longer fit this model of the universe based on their studies and based on their measurements. And eventually, there was so much information, they had to switch to a heliocentric model of the universe, where the sun was at the center of the solar system. So it's a paradigm shift. And naturally, this paradigm shift, this is an analogy, but it happens in spiritual life as well. We receive spiritual knowledge, we get this paradigm shift. We should have questions, because suddenly we have to rebuild up everything. We have to rebuild up how we're actually understanding what is this world. Because like Krishna consciousness is not just something nice. Many people, their spiritual life is like, yeah, I do spiritual life on the side. I've got my life and I add a little bit of spirituality, I add a bit of Krishna. And that's nice, but really when you actually understand this philosophy, you have to understand that actually, the entirety of my life is meant for Krishna. Every single aspect of my being. Okay, maybe even if I'm working, if I've got a family, still these are all meant for Krishna. It's quite all-encompassing. It's difficult to do spiritual life on the side. But still on the side is good, if that's all. So we see throughout the Gita, Arjuna is presenting very many pertinent and important questions which are actually allowing this nectar to flow of the Bhagavad Gita. Without these questions, we wouldn't actually get all these great teachings. So previously, in the first 2 verses of the 8th chapter, Arjuna is asked a series of questions. Quite a lot of questions, all in one go. And these questions are based off of what Krishna has said previously. You see, Arjuna is really trying to assimilate this knowledge Krishna has given him. And in the end of the 7th chapter, Krishna has said certain things. So Krishna said, intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me in devotional service. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental activities. So here, he's talking about Brahma, he's talking about Adhyatma, and he's talking about Karma. So certain things which Arjuna doesn't understand exactly what these are. And then later, he's saying, one has to know me as the governing principle, all material manifestations of the demigods, and of all methods of sacrifice, and one should know me at the time of death. So Krishna has said this to Arjuna, and Arjuna is going, well, what does that mean? Because Arjuna is really trying to understand this knowledge. You see, we can all sit there, for so many times, we're in some class or something, and things just go over our head. Perhaps when we're studying material education, we're at university, we're sitting in a class, and they're teaching you about advanced calculus, or whatever it is you study at university. And ultimately, if you don't care, you're sitting there, and they're telling you about how the proton spins around the atom, whatever it is. And you're sitting there simply because you want the qualification. You don't care about that subject. That information is not meaning much to you. Then you're just very happy to be passive. Just sit there and let this information come. Okay, and in time of exams, I'll memorize a couple of things, I'll regurgitate it, and then I'll forget it. You think about how much you've learned throughout school versus how much of that information you have now. This is a slightly strange system of education. Because ultimately we don't see the importance of that information. But in spiritual life, you see, the difference is we have to really appreciate how important this information is. Because actually, by this hearing process, this is what saves us. This is our only remedy. We have to understand, Arjuna's in a position where he's realizing, I am completely lost. I've got absolutely no idea who I am. I've got no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know where I am. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here. And actually, we're all in the position of Arjuna. Because unless we're a self-realized soul, we don't know who we are, we don't know where we are, and we don't know what we're doing. And people act with so much confidence. Yes, I'm going to achieve this. I'm going to get this qualification. I'm going to get this job. I'm going to do this thing for humanity. I'm going to get this award. But they've got no idea who they are. They've got no idea where they are. And they've got no idea what they're supposed to be doing. They just do it with a lot of confidence, so people worship them. So actually, when you come to this point, when you can actually genuinely realize, I am completely lost, this allows you, this gives you the humility by which you can actually listen. And listen with this rapt attention, drinking in every single syllable, because you're so desperate for the answer. You're so desperate, and then the speaker says one thing which you don't quite understand, and you're like, what does that mean? What does that mean? Because you really need to know. You realize actually this information is, this isn't more than a matter of life and death. This is a matter of lives and deaths. For so long we've been going around here just completely lost, but actually by this information, by hearing, then ultimately we can get free. So we have to develop that urgency with our hearing. We have books, etc. at home. Everybody's got books, but do we read them with this sincere feeling of, I need this knowledge. This knowledge is actually what's going to save me. Srila Sanatana Goswami in his Mahima Stotra, the Srimad Bhagavatam, he says, Srimad Bhagavatam, you're my only friend. My only friend, my well-wisher, you're to be served. Because actually these Shastras, these are what are guiding us out of this dark well of material existence. So the series of questions that Arjuna asks, based on what Krishna said previously, he says, what is Brahman? So he's a bit confused because Brahman sometimes refers to the word Brahman is one of these words which has lots of different meanings. Easily put, Brahman basically means spiritual, which is a very vague thing. But so Brahman can refer to Krishna. It can refer to Krishna's effulgence, and it can also refer to the living entity who is also spiritual. So here Arjuna is trying to clarify what is Brahman. He also wants to know what is the self, and he wants to know what is its fruit of activities, karma. What is the material manifestation, and what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. So in this text 3, the text for today, Krishna answers very, very clearly. We did read the verse in the translation, but I wonder how many people it's sunk in. Please don't look at the screen. Okay, Jesse, can you tell me, what is karma? Action. According to what Krishna says in this verse. See, everybody knows what is karma, yeah? But actually, he gives a very specific, detailed answer. Anyone else, without looking at the screen, can you tell me? Okay, that's a fair enough excuse. Okay, you can look at the screen. Okay, what is karma?
Action pertaining to the development of the material body.
It's a powerful answer. See, we talk so much about karma, but no one gives that definition of karma. But that's what Krishna gives. It's very clear. Karma is action pertaining to the development of living entities, the bodies of living entities. So you have to understand, every single action we do, if it's not spiritual, if it's not done for the pleasure of Krishna, or if it's done with any sort of material desire, it leads to the development of another material body, good or bad. But actually, they're all bad. Because material bodies, the living entity can never be happily residing in the material body if it's identifying with it. We hear the analogy Prabhupada would give of wet stool and dry stool. At the end of the day, it's all stool. So by understanding actually that this karma, every single time we perform some activity, we're actually developing our future body. Then we actually understand how deeply entangled and enmeshed we are in this entire situation. So we got Arjuna, who's reached this point where he's realizing that he's completely lost. He doesn't know who he is, where he is, or what he's supposed to be doing. And you actually understand that, say you're in a dark forest, okay? And you want to get out, but you don't know the way out. And basically what most people are doing in their life is they're literally just running blindly. Because they want to get out of the forest and they've got no idea how to get there, and they hear some noise over here, so they think maybe it's over here. They smell something nice over there, they think maybe it's over there. They see a splash in the distance, maybe it's over there. And actually all they're doing is getting deeper and deeper and deeper into that forest. And it's only by this hearing process can we actually come out of that forest. So again, we have to listen with that mood of Arjuna and that inquisitive to actually understand, okay, what is karma? And he's also wondering what is... So he's asked, what is Brahman? So Krishna's explained that the living entity in this case is referred to as Brahman. Krishna is Para-Brahman. He's the supreme spirit, and we're also spiritual. So your identity is here. You are spirit. You are eternal, indestructible. You are spirit. But you're different from Krishna. He's very clear. This is your identity. But your eternal nature, there's Ajatma, the self. This refers to the impressions which are placed upon that jivatma, that spiritual spark which we are, is covered by these impressions as we go deeper into this forest. So we're in this forest of material existence, getting deeper and deeper, not quite knowing where we're supposed to be going. And as we go, then we get different impressions. You know, we get scared of certain things. We like certain things. So you can see two people can be born in the same family. Like I've got sisters who are twins. Actually, I've got 4 sisters, twins and twins. And it's interesting, twins, because they're born in exactly the same time, minutes apart, and they're raised in exactly the same way. Identical, basically, but their personalities, their likes, their interests, miles apart. Absolute miles apart. One absolutely loves sports. The other one detests sports. One loves music. The other one just can't sing a note to save themselves. Because previously they've had these impressions over time. And this is developing them and is actually pushing them in a very, very strong direction. And even from a psychological point of view, it's seen that the living entity doesn't have very much freedom. There's a famous court case in New York. They committed a very horrible crime. They committed some murder. But the lawyer managed to get them away from a very severe punishment by somehow proving that the living entity doesn't actually have any freedom. Simply by all this, he was abused by his parents growing up. He was witness to all this violence. And they gave all these different reasons that this person are practically forced. They had no freedom in it. They just committed this murder. And psychologists, they accept this a lot, that we have very little freedom. And from a Vedic point of view, this is also true, that when we're conditioned, we simply act without actually understanding that we are that Brahman, that spiritual spark. We simply act based upon these impressions, getting deeper and deeper into this forest. Therefore, and so it's described actually in the Bhagavatam that this entire forest, the first material element which is created. Anybody know what is the first material element which is created? There's 5 elements, but the first one? Ether, yes. And what sense? So ether is related to sound. From ether, the sound travels through ether, and then from ether comes air, etc. So everything begins initially with sound. And so actually, Prabhupada writes in one purport in the 4th canto, or the 3rd canto, that similarly, because this entire material manifestation came into being by the process of sound, by the process of spiritual sound, it can be completely reversed. See, this is the magic. We're in this dark forest, and we're lost. We don't know who we are. We're just sort of blindly getting deeper and deeper, trying to find some happiness, and we're creating more and more causes and effects, developing more and more material bodies. But by this process of spiritual sound, then it actually can disentangle us from the entire thing. It can solve the problem at its root. And this highest spiritual sound is the chanting of Hare Krishna. And so Arjuna, he's asking these questions to Krishna in this deep, deep desperation of wanting to get free from this situation. And in that deep, deep desperation of wanting to get free from the situation, he can actually deeply imbibe that spiritual sound he's getting from Krishna. And when that's deeply imbibed into him, it's become part of his consciousness, then he's able to act, and he's able to actually become liberated from this entire situation. So it's said in the Nectar of Devotion, Iha yasya hrer dasya karmana manasagira nikalasya vivashtashu jivan mukta se uchate. That although one may still be in a material body, if all their activities, their karma, their words, their thoughts are engaged in the service of the Lord, then jivan mukta, they are liberated, although in a material body. So that becomes the situation of Arjuna. You see, Arjuna at the start, he's waiting to go to battle. At the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna goes to battle. You know, if you're looking at it from an overview, you could take out the Bhagavad Gita from the Mahabharata and you just see Arjuna fights, you know. And you put the Bhagavad Gita in, Arjuna, he fights. It's the same. But what changes is the consciousness. The consciousness has changed. Arjuna is now acting purely for the satisfaction of Krishna. And therefore, he's actually liberated. And he comes free from this entire deep entanglement. And this is the potency of spiritual sound. And so, the same has to be there when we are... You see, Prabhupada said, when you read Bhagavad Gita, it's not like it was simply... This potency was simply there for Arjuna. Okay, fair enough, Arjuna could hear from Krishna, but like, what are we going to do? You know, we're 5,000 later. No, the potency is still there, but there is a quality of listening. You see, to produce a child, you need a man and a woman, and the man needs to be potent and the woman needs to be fertile. And if either the man is not potent, the woman is not fertile, no child will be produced. So similarly, you know, Krishna's words, they're fully potent. But are we fertile? Can we listen with that desperation and that sincere need to hear that Arjuna is saying? And then we'll properly imbibe it. And then we'll actually live according to what it says. And so we always have so many difficulties in our spiritual life. I like to moan. I feel so many things are wrong and I wish this would happen. And why is this happening to me? And but actually, you see, in material life, they have this fear of missing out. Anyone heard of this? FOMO. Fear of missing out. You always feel something will happen better, you know? I remember feeling, why can I not have been around when Prabhupada was here? I mean, imagine that. Imagine, I was reading Tamal Krishna Goswami's biography, Seven of the Seven. He's spending so much time with Prabhupada. I'm so jealous of him. And I want to be there. And then you go back and you're like, well, actually, wouldn't it be cool to be in, when Mahaprabhu was here? And you want that. You want that association. And then even today, you're like, well, okay, I want to spend time with my spiritual master. I want this, I want that. But actually, the ability to associate with these great devotees is never lost. The potency is always there. Prabhupada said, if you want to associate with me, read my books. But there has to be this mood of association, this desperation. So Prabhupada had many disciples, but he didn't let all of them into his inner circle. Same with Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu had circles of devotees. He had his very, very intimate, close associates. And then the other ones were also close, but not so close. And then the other ones which are more external. And so we have to become fully aligned to the spiritual master to get very, very close. And so ultimately all this comes about by the process of hearing. And so when we're chanting the Lord's holy names, it's described as two: we chant japa and we chant kirtan congregationally. And so you take some medication, then you either take it in tablet form, or if the disease is very strong, then you need intravenous, you need injection. So I describe kirtan as like this: we take every day, we take tablets, we chant our japa, and we sincerely beg Krishna to descend in that holy name. So it actually will, because there's a difference. Anyone can make the sound Hare Krishna. A robot can make that sound. A parrot can make that sound. The sound itself, see, it's like, we have the deity. Okay, what's the deity's made of? They can be wood, stone, marble. Like, that's not different from any other wood, stone, marble. And you can actually make that wood, stone, or marble into the shape of Krishna. But until you serve Krishna with love, until you invite him to please come and please accept his service, then is Krishna really there? Krishna's all pervading, but is he really there? Is he really? You can see it. You go take darshan of different deities, and you can go to some shop where they sell murtis of Krishna or something. It's like, okay, that's Krishna. Whereas you go to a deity, you go to the front Radha Gokulananda, we see they've been served with love for so many years. Like, Krishna is so present. And so it's the same when we chant the holy names. Mahatma Prabhu says it's like you can shoot blank bullets. You got a gun, but I don't even know how guns work, but somehow they put blanks into it so that it makes the noise of shooting. And they do it for films or for some things, so it goes poof, and they could have a pretend thing here so blood splurts out, and but it's not done any damage. So same, if we're chanting Hare Krishna, we're making the sound vibration. But if we're not actually sincerely begging Krishna to please descend in your holy name, to allow me to serve you, if we're not trying with all our endeavour to get free from offence when we chant, then it's a blank bullet. It makes a sound. It looks good. You can sit in the temple room and be really fired up, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Lots of blank bullets. But if we can really capture the spiritual sound, of course Krishna can never be captured. So simply the mood is begging. You simply have to beg Krishna, please descend. Yeah, there was a couple of other things I was going to mention, but they've sort of gone out of my mind. Perhaps any comments or questions so far? Yes, Rasananda.
While you were explaining the Adhyatma part yourself, you mentioned, it wasn't clear for me because you mentioned impressions and kind of the things that go on, like in terms of our personality within our conditioned state. But within the verse, it states that it is our eternal nature. How do we understand this? If you can please clarify.
Yeah. see, because it defines, there's Brahman, which, I was reading the commentaries of Baladev Vijayabhushan, and he's saying Brahman refers to Jivatma. And then this Adhyatma, Adya, I mean that sort of something to do with what sort of superintends or directs the Atma. And therefore you're saying it was these impressions. But Prabhupada's not saying that so directly, so perhaps I should probably clarify before I start saying things like that in class in front of Prabhupada. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. But the nature, again it says his eternal nature. Nature is often referring to Prakriti. So in the 13th chapter, so actually even in text 4 here, it says the physical nature which is constantly changing. It's called Adibhuta. And so there's this separation between the spirit soul which is eternal, and so the jiva is eternal, and also Prakriti which is eternal, but is constantly changing. So Prakriti always exists, either it's manifest or unmanifest. And when the living entity comes in contact with that, then it begins to associate with the Prakriti, and it can identify with it, and it becomes influenced by it. But ultimately it's separate, two entirely separate energies of the Lord. But I'll do more research and get back to you before I start just speculating. I'm a bit of a speculator. But thank you for. Well, what is very interesting is this. In the end of the Prabhupada describes. It's funny. It's in the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is like everybody reads the Bhagavad Gita when they come to Krishna consciousness. But how often do you hear about this cycle of the living entity? What does it say? You go into the heavenly planets, and when using all the merits of his sacrifice, he descends in rain. He takes on the form of grains, is eaten by a man, goes into the semen, is impregnated into a woman, and takes the form of man again. We don't hear about that very often. In this way, the living entity perpetually comes and goes on the material path. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
You mentioned the black birds, analogy. Could you repeat how when we chant we can make those birds like?
The main thing is attention. It's described, all the offences spring from inattention. Like we make offences. Yeah. The reason we state the offences is because these are our. It's like our second nature. We want to blaspheme devotees. The first one. It's like the very first one. No, okay, that's why you've already failed at that mark. It's what are we going to do? We don't even bother having to repeat the rest of them. We've already failed at the first one. But if we can actually see, the thing is that there's sincerity. Is that you're chanting around. It's okay. Yes, my mind is all over the place. Yes, I've got all these faults. Yes, I've got doubts. Yes, all these things are here, but I'm just gonna try. Krishna, I'm really gonna try. And the mind is gonna go elsewhere, and I'm gonna bring it back. And it was that sincere desire Krishna reciprocates. Chanting is not a mechanical process. It's not like, well, if I wake up at this time, and if I chant in this place, and I chant with my special lucky bead bag, and I chant at this particular speed, you always think when you're chanting, you get like a certain trick, if I chant fast, then it's really good. And you do that for like a week, and then it goes. Or if I chant, 3 times the Pancha Tattva mantra before it, then it's good. Or I remember one time I was chanting, and I was getting a bit sleepy, and I went up on my knees, and I stood like and I was really awake, and I've worked it out. It's like no, that's a mechanical thing. It can work for a little while, but it's not gonna give you the pure holy name. But when Krishna sees your sincere endeavor, then he reciprocates. That's all it is. And then he, by his own free will, he descends. So you cannot force Krishna, but you can attract him. So like that. Yeah. That's true. Hare Krishna.
My question is, so what exactly is the nature of that sincerity? Because that's all it comes down to. And we often hear, therefore, like, if Krishna doesn't reciprocate, it's because we're not sincere enough. And we're like, yeah, but I'm trying. Like, and the devotees will tell you, it's not because you're not sincere enough. You're like, yeah, but I'm trying to be sincere. They say, like, yeah, but you're not. How do you know I'm even sincere or that I'm not sincere? Like, because if it's not about the things you are trying in order to get Krishna's attention, what is the nature of the sincerity? What is the nature of that begging?
I heard one nice thing. You know the word sincere, the etymology of it. I don't know how, maybe dubious, but it comes from supposedly the Latin meaning sinceris. Ceres refers to wax, and sin means without. So when they were making beautiful marble carvings, marble statues, if they have very, very good marble, good quality marble, and carved by a very expert carver, sculptor, then there'd be absolutely no cracks. Whereas if the marble is not so good quality, or the sculptor is not so good quality, there'd be slight cracks appearing, and they would fill these with wax. So it'd be less good, it's sort of impure. So if it's very high quality, it would be sincere. Sincere without wax. So same is a matter of purity, and we have to understand the soul, that you, in your truest essence of who you are without wax, you're without any impurity, you're completely sincere. Like you are, every single living entity is completely sincere. But then because the mind is there, then the mind comes up with all these other things. The mind wants, due to the false ego, etc., we want other things. We've got impurities. One devotee was saying is like, you can be chanting, like you say you're chanting and you really feel it is sincere. And then still the mind comes up with stuff like, oh, you're such a fake devotee, or, look how good you are, you're chanting really sincerely, and it ruins it again. But these things are manifested in action. Like you cannot say, again, reading this biography, Indra Prabhu, he quotes this from Vishnujan Swami. He says, do not say you want to do something and not do it. That means you don't want to do it. So actually, if you're sincerely engaged in your spiritual life, if you received instructions from the spiritual master, I think, well, that position of Arjuna, like, I'm completely lost. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm doing, but somehow I've got this instruction, and it's not the instructions that come through the books as well. And it's not just you have to be directly told, but so you receive some instruction and you're really trying to follow it. It's okay. Yeah, I've got so many other ulterior desires. My mind is saying like this. Mentally, I'm blaspheming every devotee left, right, and centre. I cannot stay awake during my japa, and all these things are wrong with me. But still, I'm just going to try and follow that instruction. Even just, I made a vow I'm going to chant 16 rounds. And you just, regardless of what the mind's saying, you're just making that endeavour, then, as far as I can tell, this is sincerity. And Krishna is simply waiting to find the proper time to reciprocate. But perhaps you have some thoughts on it as well.
I was wondering what Prabhupada would say about this one. In the sense that he always had this way of explaining things in such a simple way that maybe a child can understand it. But this question of sincerity, it seems complicated, more intricate than I thought it was. So I understand, of course, what you are saying. Still, I'm not fully grasping it.
I guess it all comes down to desire. The reason we're here is because of desire. And if we want to get back, then the reason we go back to Krishna is because of desire. But if you do some research and then we can do who?
You mentioned about autopilot, and I'm just thinking that like many people have been concept of something higher. They probably have faith in God, but are still on autopilot? Like, what's the difference between on autopilot and being not on autopilot?
Difference between autopilot. Again, it's just this desperation. If you actually realize the importance of this opportunity you have, that you've just been wandering around in this material, cesspit for. Was it Shiva Maharaj says? You said wallowing in this cesspit of material desires. That's what we've been doing for a very long time, and actually now we have an opportunity of getting free from that. Now is it? There's not going to be a single better opportunity. Now is it? This opportunity we have is just mind-blowingly perfect. Then you're not going to waste any single minute. You're going to be constantly thinking how you can improve your devotional service. And like, ultimately, was it Maharaj Katvanga? He became Krishna conscious in one moment. If you're fully alive and fully conscious of it, then you become Krishna conscious one moment. So actually, we're all, to some degree or another, we're on autopilot until we actually become like that. Vishwa. Vishwa?
Yeah, so also about this topic of sincerity. I mean, when sincerity comes for me, it's like, like it feels like I've done all this practice, and then I get like a tank of sincerity, and then I can use that, and then it runs out, like this. So it's like, so then how do we go above this, where it's not just we're filling up sincerity and then it runs out, and it's like this cycle, where at some point, yeah, if that makes any sense.
Don't know. You need to ask someone who's sincere. Yeah. Perhaps anyone has any thoughts on the matter? Sincerity. Yeah, I'm suddenly realising that I've don't know if I've ever actually been sincere. But if you can chant once sincerely, isn't it? So Lord Ramachandra says, if you once sincerely calls out and asks me for protection, I will give him all courage. I'll look after him. Sorry, that's not an answer. But Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Anantakoti Vaishnavanda ki.
Kiva Jaya Jaya Gaura Chande Arati Kosopa Kiva Jaya Jaya Gaura Chande Arati Kosoba Janavita Tavane Jagamana Loba Janabhitatapane Jagamanalopa Takine Taichan Pame Gadadara Takin Nitaichan Pame Gadadara Nikate Adretashini Vasa Chatradara Nikate Adretashini Vasa Chatradara Posi Ache Gorachan Ratna Simhasane Posi Ache Gorachan Ratna Simhasane Arati Koren Brahma Adi Devagane Arati Koren Brahma Adi Devagane Narahari Adi Kori Chamara Dulaya Narahari Adi Kori Chamara Dulaya Sanjaya Mukunda Basu Gosadigaya Sanjaya Mukunda Basu Gosadigaya Sankha Bhaje Gandha Bhaje 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 Karatala Sankha Bhaje Gandha Bhaje baje baje karatala. Madhura Mridanga baje.